Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are on Ace of the Diamond, Act 2, episodes 36, 37, and 38. Last set of episodes, the last 3 sets of episodes, I've talked for over an hour about them because there's just been so much to talk about, so much character development, so much happening with gearing up for the summer tournament. It's just like they are prepping us for the end-all be-all. And I know that the manga at this point, I'm pretty sure, is still in Act 2. And so, I don't know. At this point in time, I don't know if Terajima will do an Act 3. I could see, since Miyuki is kind of one of the central characters and he's graduating after this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Terajima kind of did what another sports anime that I've watched and read has done, and would do after this act, would focus maybe on the pro side of it, maybe do a time skip and show us Sawamura after he's graduated. I'm kind of torn because on the one hand, I would love to see an Act 3 and see what the Sawamura as a third year and Furuya and them are like, along with Asada and them, and then get even more new characters involved. But on the other hand, I could see how Terajima would be like a whole nother set of first years, oh my god, and be like, And plus it wouldn't be without, we've grown up with this series, looking at Miyuki and Miyuki, Kuramochi, Zono, and all of them. And so seeing them all gone, it would be really hard, and maybe Terajima would want to destroy us and do that, but I could definitely see him doing like a time skip after Act 2, showing us like what Sawamura did after high school, what Furuya did after high school, showing us what the first years did afterwards, and flash back to segments of their third year, and maybe show us what Asada and Koshu and them did their second year as well. And just kind of show us, I would be okay with that. If they did like a pro series and then showed us like glimpses, bits and pieces of what happened that third year, kind of to supplement, rather than us go through the entire third year, I'd be okay with that. I'd be fine. I don't know what he's going to end up doing, but I'm excited to read the manga after this season is over and catch up with you all and see what's happening, because I have a feeling it's going to be during this summer tournament and it's going to be crazy, and I'm really, really excited. But yeah, so I'm actually going out of town next weekend for vacation, so I'm going to be recording this set of episodes, and then I'll probably wait a couple days and go ahead and record 39, 40, and 41. So that way it'll be done while I'm on vacation. So I am going to watch a little bit ahead, but if you guys have any comments, I will be looking at them, and if there's anything that pops up, I'll mention it here. But I'm really excited for these episodes. The last set, we got a bit on the training camp. I'm pretty sure we're not done with the training camp, and that Miyuki had his experience with, because we got a tease of Mei and Miyuki, but it wasn't a lot. And I'm like, oh, come on, you guys are going to show us more than that, right? All we got was Mei being like, oh, do you want to practice with me? And Miyuki being like, sure, and that's all we got. No, I did simp pretty hard for Shenshin though last episode. No regrets at all. So let's not waste any more time and dive right into this set of episodes. I'm really, really excited. So as always, I hope you guys enjoy the reaction and discussion, but we are going to start Ace of the Diamond Act 2, episode 36, 37, 38 here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really glad that this episode had as much going on as it did, because I'm not gonna lie, when it started to get to Ono and Nabe in the car and Nabe started crying, I was getting misty-eyed. And it was all welling up, and I was like, am I really gonna cry about this? Even though it's so freaking sad with Ono. And then luckily we had to switch back to Mei and them, because I'm like, oh, thank God, because I was like, I don't want to cry, and we're only in the second episode. It's crazy, because going back and forth, it's dealing with these characters. It's Miyuki is seeing just how tough Inashiro is going to be as an opponent in the summer tournament, like just how hard they're going to be to beat because of the mentality that they have. Meanwhile, Sato has been doing so good, like building their team up, but this game is like just showing how they really got to pull it together for the summer tournament to beat Inashiro, and I don't know if they're going to be able to or not. I'm like, if they even get to Inashiro, that's the thing. I feel like they're building up this series that Inashiro is going to be like at least one of the major teams they face at some point. Now the question is going to be, are they going to end up facing Inashiro like early on in the bracket, and it's going to be like that game? Like, are we going to make it any further in the national championship, or are we done? Or is it going to be like the final and they face Inashiro like in the final? It wouldn't surprise me if Terajima did it either way. they either face Inashiro in the final or like the semifinals, or they face Inashiro early on. Like that seems, I don't know how they're going to do it. I guess once we get into the summer tournament and see what the bracket looks like, then I'll have a better idea. But this episode had the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we need to talk about it because, my gosh, these three episodes, it was just showing the spectrum of going from the invincible mentality, as episode 37 is called, to fragile, which episode 38 is called. And that's a really interesting contrast there. But we need to talk about, I took the most notes about episode 38, the most notes with that episode, but I've got a lot of notes for 36 and 37 as well. So the American team, I think it's so cute. We'll talk about it later, that they all have grown up together. They're all childhood friends that have come to play baseball. And it's kind of like what May's dream team could have been, you know, except they're all childhood friends. It strikes me as a mix of May's dream team and then also Sawamura and his friends from middle school, like if they'd kept on playing high school ball. Like that's what it reminds me of, and if they were all really freaking good. But Carlisle, I like that Carlisle is the Miyuki equivalent. He's America's Miyuki equivalent. I like that this show really like plays on different body types of, and it's done that all along. I mean, you've had like Azuma and everything playing on the body types of like bigger characters, and you have like Harada is a stockier guy, Zono is a stockier guy, but they really show like the body types of like the American players are just like bigger, beefier dudes, especially Carlisle. He's got like a giant square jaw, man. Doesn't quite equal Inoue's though. God, we'll talk about Inoue. But I like that he's like the Miyuki equivalent. He's the catcher and cleanup. He's one that they have to watch. And then we have Harris as another team member. I like that Miyuki describes him as when you're facing him, he's like a god. And when you're on the same team as him, he's like a demon. It's like, oh, that contrast. That's really good. I like that a lot. And then Jay Conrad, this tall pitcher who does not need to smile ever. Like that smile is the creepiest thing. Like the smile he had in like episode 37, I was like, he's got the creepiest smile, and it's almost like Sawamura's on steroids. It's crazy, but yeah. And then I'm sorry, but the English voice acting in these episodes, I'm spoiled because Free, for all I make fun of Free's English voice acting is the most endearing, charming thing ever. And the coach for the American team in this sounds like the English voice acting from Free. And then Carlisle kind of sounds like he might have the same voice actor as Ralph from Free. Maybe. I'd have to look that up. But the voice acting is, for the English voice actors, it's fine. Episode 38, we'll talk about it. I was like, episode 38, it was off a lot. I was like, what is happening? Like, the sentences did not make sense. I was like, this is not proper English. What is this? I was very confused, but we'll get to that. But May looking at Conrad, and because Conrad, we find out later, is a southpaw pitcher, or, you know, if you were paying attention all along, you know he's a southpaw pitcher. But May doesn't want to be shown up. He's like, oh, this southpaw from America comes in? Like, May is not one to be shown up in a game. He wants to be the king. And I think he tolerates Shinshin, and he's friends with Shinshin because Shinshin's just that good. And May's like, utmost respect, dude. You and I, we're like the best pitchers in the world. Cool. Like, I just feel like May really likes Shinshin, and so he respects him a lot. And Shinshin is May's type of person. He's not trolling like Miyuki, but he's not loud and obnoxious, and he's not condescending like Umemiya. Shinshin's just good and just a good person. And so May's like, I can respect you. And Shinshin doesn't challenge May. So I think May's like, we could be friends. And Shinshin's like, okay. And so I like that a lot. But then we cut to Sato versus Yamamori, and I've got a lot to say about Yamamori. I was getting a lot of Jozenji flashbacks, which we'll talk about throughout this discussion. If you don't know what Jozenji is, they are a team in Haikyuu, a volleyball team, and they're known as the party team. And by party team, I mean they're always happy. They're just happy to be playing volleyball. They're like, let's do it. Let's make bold plays. Let's just do it. Have fun with it. They're like, we're just here to have fun. And they're just kind of like this like laid back, chill team that just wants to be optimistic and have fun with everything. And there's a lesson to be learned with their team in that series. But Yamamori reminds me a lot of them in that they're just playing baseball to have fun, and they get to like develop all these plays and stuff just under the guise of we're just having fun playing baseball, and whatever happens, happens. Like, it has a similar vibe. I like it. I also like Ogawara, who's their coach. He seems like pretty chill, like just a laid back guy, like we got this plan. But he's not condescending, he's not lazy, but he's not like, he fits their vibe really well. And I like this coach, just kind of like, he's kind of vanilla, but it's like the good kind of vanilla, you know, there's vanilla ice cream and then there's like vanilla bean that's got like the little black specks in it and it's like infinitely better. He's like the vanilla bean ice cream coach of baseball in Ace of the Diamond. He's just pretty normal, but he's in a good way, right? The best kind of normal. So I like that Furuya is getting inspired by Ono and Sawamura. That he's getting inspired by both of them, like cheering him on. And he's like, not, what did I put on here? He says he's not fit to wear the ace number yet. So I like that Furuya I've liked so far, like since they've done the no numbers thing and he's been fighting to get back to fighting shape, I've liked Furuya's character a lot. And I like that Furuya is self-aware that he's like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not at my best yet. I've still got a ways to go. I'm like, good. I like that Furuya is realizing that, right? That's a good thing. And then, God, the American team, we cut back to May and the American team a lot in these episodes. But I love that the American team thought that May was the first year and they were making fun of him so hardcore. That one guy, was it Reinhardt? Yeah, Reinhardt. He was like, why is this middle schooler here? I was like, dude, the shade of this man. I was getting very much Hoshiyumi vibes from May in these episodes. And again, Haikyuu, if you don't know Hoshiyumi, he's a player for this amazing team, Kamomedai. Kamomedai, I would kind of say is Inishiro's, it's funny because I feel like talent-wise, Inishiro is the Kamomedai of Ace of the Diamond. But player-wise, as much as we see Inishiro's players, they're more like Shiratorizawa. So it's kind of odd to compare them. But I feel like May is a lot like Hoshiyumi. Hoshiyumi is like the GOAT rival hitter for Kamomedai, and he's like a short player and he gets made fun of because of his height a lot, but he's like, no, screw you, I'm really good. And then May is kind of like sort of the same way. He just wants to be the king, the pitcher king. I like it. So I really like the idea too of Miyuki kind of reflecting on the fact that he's on the same team as May. And Miyuki kind of, again, May and Miyuki give out such ex-boyfriend vibes. I'm sorry, but it's all over the place in these episodes. Like, first of all, when Miyuki's like, he's kind of flustered. He's like, man, me and May are on the same team for the first time and I'm playing first base. He's like, why aren't I catching? He's like, he's almost embarrassed, right? He's like, we're playing on a team for the first time and I'm stuck on first base. It's like, you know, so there's that. And then Reinhardt, the one that makes fun of him, is the one that gets taken down by May. So it's like fitting karma. Shirakawa is such a petty bitch. I'm sorry. I'm not a Shirakawa fan. I'm just like, what is your deal? And we were talking in the Discord about this. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that Shirakawa has like the biggest crush on May. Like he's constantly around May. He's sitting next to him. He's constantly ragging on Miyuki and just making fun of him, just being like, you're not good enough for May. And it's like, will you leave him alone? I'm like, Shirakawa has, in my mind, the biggest crush on May, and May just doesn't acknowledge Shirakawa and it drives him crazy. And so he's just the most petty bitch. But him calling May a tyrant instead of just a king is interesting. And then Conrad smiling. He reminds me of the guy that you guys said was from a few episodes ago. I thought this one team was Maki's team. And you're like, no, it's the guy with the man that smiles really creepy. And I was like, oh yeah. Yeah, Conrad's smile is like his smile. It's kind of creepy. If you don't want to do it ever again, that's fine by me. But then, yeah, we turn back to the twin pitchers of Yamamori. I'm so glad that y'all didn't spoil me, because back when we were getting introduced to all these teams, one thing that I like about this series is that we see in this episode, in this set of episodes especially, is that Terajima brings it all back around. Like, he takes something that he told you back a season ago and brings it all back around to this season. And you're like, oh yeah, that all connects. So way back when we were getting introduced to these teams, I remember seeing the Yamamori, the twin pitchers, and I was like, oh, are we going to get to see them? That'd be kind of cool. Like, it was at the start of this season. I was like, are we going to get to see them? That'd be really cool. And then we didn't. And I was like, oh, well, that seems like a waste. And now we're coming back to see them in action. I was like, Terajima does not waste anything. He just knows when he's going to bring it back. And he plants the seeds and gets you invested. And then you're like, oh, when's it going to... And then he drops the bomb on you. And you're like, oh, there it is. So yeah, like with the Ono thing this episode, Terajima, how dare you? Like, just drop that on us at the last minute. We'll get to that. But the Kotari brothers, they're always so happy. Yudo and Kazuto. We find out Kazuto's the older one. And they look the same. It's always weird in sports anime. Twins are either handled, there's a spectrum of how twins are handled. And the Kotari brothers are kind of in the middle, I guess. You have like Johto and Joda in Run with the Wind, who kind of like, even though the show kind of establishes them having their own identity, they're still identical twins, and it's kind of hard to tell them apart, and they don't get a lot of screen time in that series, which that's kind of my only big lament with Run with the Wind, is we don't get as much screen time with the twins as I think we could. And then you have like Haikyuu, where Atsumu and Osamu, who are the twins, they not only, even though they're somewhat identical, they do different hair colors, they have different personalities, they have different voice actors, they have different goals and aspirations. They are very, I think Haikyuu, of the sports anime I've seen, Haikyuu handles twins the best because Furudate makes them their own individual people. And here, even though they seem not totally the same, they're identical, and they kind of like seem like they finish each other's sentences and are kind of like linked together and synced up. It's fine, but I like how Haikyuu treats twins. But then again, Osamu and Atsumu are like main characters in the ensemble, and so it makes sense that they have to be differentiated. And it's part of like a thematic message in that series, whereas I think these two are just twins as kind of just a gimmick in the show of saying they're perfectly in sync as a battery. It's funny because my coworker I've talked about in previous episodes, her sons are twins and they're catcher and pitcher on their baseball team. And it's like, so I was getting major vibes to them watching this. I was like, I know two boys that are exactly like this. I like the coach of Yamamori though, who's like, okay, you guys can take your time and chill, but don't be mentally passive. I like that. He's like, as you're waiting for balls to pass, be thinking of what to do next. Be thinking of what the pitcher's doing. Be thinking of the plays. How is it going to affect your team? He's like, don't just sit there. Even if you're not swinging, don't be mentally passive. Don't take it as a time to zone out. Instead, stay hyper-focused, even if you don't swing. I like that. And then Sawamura was on a roll these episodes. He was just throwing out nicknames left and right. It was great. But like calling Tojo the last line of hope. So good. And then Ono. I like Ono telling him, he's like, you don't have to just overpower the pitcher. You can think, we can strategize. Don't just try to overpower. Like, you're trying to heal up. Remember, don't overdo it. Let's be smart about this. And then that's when he remembers Furuya remembers him not catching the ball. And we go into that ordeal here shortly. I've got a few notes before we get into that. But Sawamura cheering him on. I love that Sawamura is just cheering Furuya on, being the best teammate, being the spirit of the ace, like just making the team, pulling the team forward, bringing them all together. It's kind of like Mei, and we'll talk about that when we get to Mei's whole dexterity and his whole statement. We'll talk about that, but there is a lot of comparisons to Mei and Sawamura. Sawamura is just not a diva. That's the biggest difference. Mei is a total diva and is like, praise me. Even when he's not being serious, he comes across that way and you can't quite tell. Whereas I don't think Sawamura would ever say, praise me, Miyuki. I don't think Sawamura would ever say that. I think he'd be too embarrassed. But he has that same like upbeat, we're gonna win, let's do this mentality that Mei has. That's, I can see the connections, and we'll talk more about that when we get back to Mei. But Ono's just being good. Like, Ogawara acknowledges that Ono's good. Kachayoka says that Ono's gotten good. It should have been a sign, right? It should have been the biggest foreshadowing. When everybody starts praising Ono, it should have been a sign that something bad was going to happen. And then we got sudden backstory flashbacks to the Jingu tournament. Should have been a foreshadowing. Didn't see it coming. But, oh man. I love that Terajima, he saved that Meiho moment from the Jingu tournament. He saved it for these episodes to bring it all back around. How dare he? Because at the time when they flashed back and told us at the Jingu tournament that they lost, like in the quarterfinals or whatever, because of an error that Ono made, I just flitted it away. I was like, okay, cool. We're not going to show that moment. Fine. I guess it was just an error. Okay, we'll establish there was an error between. And at the time, I was like, okay, well, it establishes that Ono and Furuya were not as good of a battery as Miyuki and Furuya, and that's what we're supposed to take away from it. No, Terajima was like saving it in his back pocket to whip out here for an emotional gut punch with Ono. And I was like, oh my God, you've been saving this like the whole season for this now? Oh, it was crazy. And talks about the missed ball, and Ono saying the missed ball caused us to lose that game. And so it's almost like, that negative reinforcement where he keeps it up against the wall and he's like, I don't want to be reminded of this again. So I keep using this as motivation to push forward. I'm like, God, Ono, it's crazy, right? But he hasn't told Furuya. He hasn't told Furuya that. You would think Furuya would notice the scoreboard, but Furuya's pretty simple in that regard, so he probably hasn't. And I like that Furuya the whole time is like Sleeping Beauty, like sitting there with like his arms crossed over him as Yui and Ono are like staring at him. It's great. But he keeps it as a reminder and just thinking that I can get better as a catcher. And that ties back to the title. So yeah, that just, we build Ono up and show how great he is just for him to like fall in the next episode. And I'm like, Terajima, how dare you, sir? Because episode 37, Invincible Mentality, just, oh my God. Of course, yeah, we just have Ono jam his finger, and I've had a jammed finger before, and it sucks, but I have not had jammed finger from a fastball from Furuya going 150 kilometers per hour, so I can only imagine how much that would hurt. Probably a lot. And you just instantly know how frustrated Ono is. He's like, I just had this monologue about getting stronger as a catcher, and now you do this to me, Terajima. But yeah, it's awful. And then, of course, as soon as it happens, they cut right back to the May versus the American team game, and it's like they won't instantly tell us what happens. And it's just like it's a 1-2 catcher punch. Like, just let's knock both these catchers down a peg and just see what happens. Because we have the coach and Carlisle. They sound like free characters. But then Inoue getting hit by the bat from behind, I was like, oh my gosh. And him just standing up and saying in English, no problem. I was like, ah! But he blacked out for like a hot second. They were like, you don't need to be catching anymore. But I love how concerned May was for him. May has developed, it's so funny because May is such a diva to everybody on his team. He's so demanding and such a diva, and he can be so prissy. But then he becomes like besties with Inoue and Shunshin. Like the friendship I never knew it existed. It's like, what a trip. Like I could just imagine like a road trip with Shunshin, Inoue, and May. And the thing of it is, Shunshin is probably like, I've never interacted with anybody like May, but he's a great pitcher and he respects me. So we got like this mutual broship. But then Inoue is so used to Mukai and how much of a prissy bitch he is that Inoue's like, this is nothing new. So he's just like, he can handle May, right? And May's like, you know what's up. I love it because Inoue's like, I'm used to this. So I love it, right? But Inoue getting hit by the bat, oh my gosh. And then we cut back to Zono, who is saying it's bad luck for Ono because he's like one of the third years, and he's like, our third years. And then they say it's the summer curse of Sato, that it was Chris in the first year, Tomba in the second year, and now it's Ono, which I'm like, it's not only been Ono, it's also been Furuya, which nobody knows about. It's been a trial. It's been a trial and a tribulation. Poor Sato. And you can just see how frustrated Sawamura is. And when Ono says that he's sorry to Sawamura is like, why are you apologizing to me? And in the moment, it's like Sawamura relates Ono's words to Kataoka's to him. Ono saying that he's sorry to Sawamura is like saying, hey, Sawamura, I'm sorry that I'm leaving you and Furuya to not have me as a catcher and not have Miyuki. And Sawamura, he kind of almost seems not offended by it, but he seems like, why are you apologizing to me? Like in that moment, you realize that Sawamura has faith in Yui and Koshu. He has faith in them and Kariba as catchers because he's like, oh no, why are you apologizing? Yeah, you had to leave and that sucks as a third year, but we got these guys, we're fine. like it's that same mentality that May has. He's like, we're gonna win. That's just how it's going to be. And Sawamura has that same mentality that May has. He's like, why are you saying sorry? We've got good players. We're going to be fine. Like in that moment, I was like, oh yeah, I love Sawamura's attitude about it. Like, he's like, don't feel bad. Like, it sucks you got injured, but we're going to be able to take up your spot and be okay. Like it's one of those things where Sato has enough good players that just losing 1 or 2 is not going to be the end of them. Or at least Sawamura has that faith in Koshu and Yui. Now, whether or not it's founded is a whole different thing because Yui struggles after Ono leaves. But just the fact that Sawamura has that faith in his team, it's the mentality of an ace, baby. I'm like, just make Sawamura the ace. I'm not asking for much. And at this point, I think they are. It's just, it's not happened yet. It's like, Terajima, you're teasing, right? But again, the Jozenji comparisons with Yamamori, I wrote down here Jozenji and the Daichi comparisons. Remember when, if you ever watched Haikyuu, remember when Daichi died? Remember when Daichi died on the court? long may he rest in peace. I got those same vibes with Ono, because it's like when Daichi leaves the court during that game, he like looks back towards Chikara and he's like, you can do this. You got this. And it's like, oh, I felt that same vibe with Ono leaving Yui, and both Yui and Chikara struggle and then they get into a rhythm, right? But I was doing good. I was doing really good. That whole thing with the chart and him keeping the scorebook after they lost the game as motivation, I was like, okay, that's sad. It's fine. But then we get Ono in the car and he holds it together for the team, and he gets in the damn car, and that little shot of the stream of tears running down his face, I was like, no, don't you do it. I was like, don't you do it. And then you look over and Nabe's crying. I'm like, don't you do this. I was like, no, oh. And we cut that with Yui missing the ball. Like, we had this big motivational moment, and then Terajima's like, words aren't everything. Actions count too. And he has Yui missing the ball and Ono and Nabe crying. I was like, how dare you? Like, this was, and I probably would have like broke down if we hadn't just cut back to Inui and the others, because I was like, okay, no, we got to find out what happened with Inui. And so that kind of took me out of the emotion for a moment. I was like, oh. But we find out that Inui, he stepped forward. The reason that he got hit with the bat was likely because he stepped forward to try to be catching Mei's breaking balls. So not that it's Mei's fault. It wasn't. It was just a moment where Inui was like, he had been watching and noticing that the guy was swinging like all the way back. And so he'd been adjusting to avoid it. And then he got so caught up in catching Mei's balls and getting into position for those that it allowed him to get hit. He just hadn't been cautious enough in that moment. But Yamako, we finally find the name of that dark-haired guy that's with Inashiro. His name is Yamako. And I was like, cool. And he's the Inashiro player. Shirakawa throwing such shade. I was like, when they're like, who's going to replace Inui? I'm like, I don't know, maybe the best catcher on the bench. I was like, other than Inui, I was like, gee, I can't imagine who's going to replace him. The only other catcher here. Who do we think? I'm like, Kunitomo, if you didn't... And that was the other thing, too. They were making a big deal about Miyuki filling in for Inoue because they're like, oh, he's from the rival team. He's going to learn about Mei's pitches. I'm like, well, Kunitomo, maybe you should have invited another catcher, right? You literally only invited 2 catchers. What did you think was going to happen? Like, did you think that was never going to be a possibility? Which I know Kunitomo probably was anticipating it and is okay with Miyuki catching. It's just Shirakawa trying to throw such shade, subbing Miyuki in, being like, I guess you'll do. It's like Shirakawa just having such antagonism towards Miyuki is kind of the most crazy thing. He's had it since day one, right? But I love the comparison of, you have like Carlos on one side and Shirakawa like behind Miyuki, and Carlos like has his arm on Miyuki's shoulder and he's like, do you think you can control our king? And Miyuki's like, well, we're exes, sure. And then Shirakawa's like, if you don't do this right, it's your fault. It's like, it's not a shoulder angel, shoulder devil scenario. It's just, it's kind of hilarious. And then Mei being like, I love that Miyuki throws the first punch. He's like, don't be shaking your head at me with your pitches. And Mei's like, well, then don't be giving me calls that I don't like. And it's just like that back and forth. But when Mei says, make me shine out there, I'm like, just Miyuki. He's like, you think you're better than me. And Mei does. And Mei shows it later on. He does think that he's better than Miyuki. He's like, don't try to show me up, catcher, and think you can control me. It's the X battery. And I love that even the crowd is like, something feels like it shouldn't be right. Something feels off. And I'm like, yeah, the X vibes. And they seem to be doing well. they seem to be doing well. Like Shirakawa says that they had this plan for if Miyuki was catcher so that he couldn't see all of Mei's pitches. But Mei's like, no, we're going to go full on out. If we're cautious, we're not going to beat this team. So no, I'm going to show you my pitches. But then Mei throws that one pitch and he's like, I think you can handle it, Miyuki. And just the look that he gives Miyuki, like that challenge, like this is what I'm going to be coming at with your team. So get ready. It's like, it's Mei and Miyuki are too much. They're too much together. And the thing of it is like Sawamura, again, has that same veracity and like power as like that spirit of, not necessarily power, but the spirit of the ace like Mei does. But Sawamura comes at it from a purely wholesome and sunshine innocent perspective. And Mei is like a freaking shark. He's like, no, I'm going to kill you and enjoy it. And Sawamura is like, maybe I'll kill you, but hey, we're having fun, right? It's just a totally different vibe. And Miyuki is like, But Sawamura, I think Mei and Sawamura both challenge Miyuki. But with Sawamura, Miyuki gets hyped up from the challenge because it's something he can work with. Mei is just like trying to, with Mei and Miyuki, it's like, I guess the best case way to describe it is Miyuki can be the dominant one in the battery and Sawamura is all about it. He's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. But when Miyuki tries to be the dominant one in the battery with Mei, Mei's like, and so they clash. So it's just, it's interesting. But I love that Carlos has like a phase system. He's like, phase 1 complete. Phase 2, let's do this. And it's like, okay, I like that. Conrad is a southpaw too. And Carlos is just friends with everybody. I love it. I love that Carlos is like, hey, Miyuki. Like, just like how Mei becomes friends with Inui and Shunshin, Miyuki and Carlos become friends. It's great. And Carlos is also friends with Umemiya. Of course, now I want to see like 2 road trips. I want to see the road trip with Shunshin, Inui, and Mei just being the biggest diva. And then I want to see Miyuki and Carlos and Umemiya just like on a road trip and Carlos and Umemiya just like jamming. I want to see this. And Miyuki just being like, I'm actually kind of an introvert, guys. Right? It's such the contrast because Mei is so extroverted and Miyuki is actually kind of introverted. So it would be so weird. Like Miyuki would just sit in the back seat like nodding the whole time, and while Umemiya and Carlos like jammed out, it'd be great. And so then we have the episode that I took the most notes on, which is episode 38, which is Fragile. And we cut back to it's 4-5 with Miyuki at bat, and so Miyuki gets out, right? He hits a grounder and he gets out, which again, this set of episodes, Terajima's come back with a vengeance with the whole, we have a big motivational speech and then it still doesn't work. Like he's done that all throughout this set, but Miyuki has that big inspirational moment and then he still gets out. But Shirakawa throwing me the damn shade, throwing Miyuki the damn shade, being like, if Itsuki would have hit it, he wouldn't have got out. I'm like, Shirakawa, you petty bitch. Like, what? He's like, Itsuki would have hit it. He could have handled it. And he has like the flashback of Itsuki being like, I got on base. It's like, I'm glad at least that Shirakawa views Itsuki so positively. I'm glad that our first year, now second year Itsuki is getting viewed positively. That's really good. Good for Itsuki. I'm glad his team thinks he's that reliable, right? But then Mei, here was the thing. Mei was like, he's like, why aren't you making me happy? I'm your partner. Make me happy. Don't you love me? And Miyuki doesn't deny it. He just goes, I'll hit next time. I just love that he doesn't dignify Mei with the no, I don't love you, or yes, I do. He just says, I'll hit it next time, you diva. Like just Miyuki's just like, just tolerate him and move on, right? It's best for the team, right? But Mei, what a freaking diva. I could never imagine Sawamura telling Miyuki, make me happy, don't you love me? Could never in a million years seeing Sawamura with attitude. No. Sawamura would like get blushy and flustered. If Sawamura does not even think that Miyuki acknowledges him, and he gets blushy faced if he even thinks it's happening. And here's Mei on the other end of the spectrum being like, praise me, Miyuki. And it's just like, what can we do? But then Mei has that mentality and those one-liners that make like Miyuki's eyes sparkle. And that is the, I don't think we'll lose. Whatever we play to win. Like even if it's a practice game, even if it's like with ourselves, like in an inter-squad game, we play to win. And that's our mentality. Like we didn't come here just to practice. We're here to like finish the other team off. And Miyuki's like, And that's the thing that I think Miyuki will see that same mentality in Sawamura, because Sawamura is the same way. He's like, no, we're going to win. We can do this. Like, I don't think Sawamura is quite on Mei's level of confidence in this is what's going to be no matter what, because Sato's not at that level overall. Like, Inishiro's entire mentality that Miyuki figures out is he's like, this is how Inishiro is. This is the mentality that they have, that they go in thinking that they are going to win, and here's what we're going to do to achieve it. And Sato's just not quite there yet. There's still a bit of inconsistency and confidence issues. I think Sato has the pieces to get there. They're just not there yet. And I think Sawamura, he has that spirit where he's like, no, we can do it. We've got all the pieces. Let's go. He just needs the whole team to back him up. Like, the whole team backs Mei and his mentality up. They're like, yeah, we're going to win. And I don't think Sato's quite there yet. But, if Sawamura was the ace, maybe he could lead him forward in doing that, And then Mei and Shunshin go to catch in the bullpen. At first, I was a little confused. I'm like, Shunshin's going to catch for him. And then I realized, they're going to the bullpen to practice while they're batting. Gotcha. I love the idea of, again, Mei and Shunshin, besties. Who knew? Who knew that was going to happen in this series? Terajima surprising me. Man, I've got to say, though, the American team, yeah, it's really cute that we get the backstory of them playing as kids since they were kids. They're all childhood friends. Conrad's had the same long hair since he was 6. Good to know. His creepy smile is creepy. Very much so. But man, the English in this episode was really off. And I've got to just comment on it because it was really noticeable. Like, they were not saying complete sentences in English. And I was like, and it's not a big deal, but one, didn't match the subtitles at all in some parts, but 2, I'm like, you couldn't do a take 2? You couldn't record that line again and make sure it was proper English? Like, it wasn't even a complete sentence at some point. I was like, it was really distracting. And I'm sure if you're a Japanese audience member watching, you don't notice because you're like, there's subtitles. But watching the episode, I was like, whoa, that was noticeable. And so it was just odd. I need to call it out because it deserves to be called out. I was like, Ace of Diamond, your ADR directors, I'm like, could have done a second take on a couple of those lines. Just saying. But yeah, Mei becoming friends with Inoue and Shunshin, him doing the little double fist bump with Inoue is the most precious thing. I'm like, I'm surprised it didn't cut to Inishiro being like, Mei's not like that with us, And then we cut to Sawamura, him and Koshu being told by Kateoka to warm up. And Sawamura telling Koshu to warm up. Since Ono's gone, he's like, don't leave Yui by himself. You need to warm up too. And it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad in that moment because Yui, I don't know if he noticed Sawamura telling Koshu to warm up, but he doesn't want to let the team or Furuya down. And so I've felt for Yui in the past several episodes because I feel like Yui, he wants to make strides as a catcher and he wants to do good. Somebody on YouTube commented that I've been calling Yui a prodigy, and they're like, Yui's not really a prodigy. He just works really super hard. And I kind of agree with y'all on that. I think it's the same thing as Furuya. I think Yui and Furuya are kind of similar in the fact that at first, I really did think that Yui and Furuya were like prodigies. But I think with Furuya, Ochiai says it best, and I can't believe I'm saying those words, and we'll get to what Ochiai was saying. I think Ochiai phrases it best for Furuya. But with Yui, I do think, like, we see Yui taking all of the notes. Like, right when this season started, we see him taking all the notes on Sawamura and the others. Like, he does his homework. I feel like, Yui isn't a prodigy. He really is somebody that has just worked really, really hard, and he's just trying his best to make it and do the best that he can in that position. So yeah, you're right. Whoever commented that, I totally agree now. Like, Yui is not a prodigy. He definitely has had to work really hard, and he's worried that he's going to let the team down. And and I think that's where Sawamura's mentality can come in to really help. If Sawamura's like, no guys, no, we got this. It's fine. We don't have to worry because our team is good enough that we can back each other up. And if one person needs to sit out and let another person take over, it's okay. We're all just that good. I feel like that's the mentality that Sawamura needs to push for the team, because I think a lot of these players are getting worried that if I don't do my part, the team's going to fall apart. Inishiro doesn't have that mentality. It's like, no, we're not going to fall apart because we're all that good, right? So I think that's the big difference. And Kateoka, I do feel that when Kateoka has his back on Yui and he's like, don't let it beat you up. It's like, oh my gosh, Kateoka, He's like just trying to encourage Yui, right? And so at this point, Furuya's done 87 pitches, and they make the executive decision that at 100 pitches, they're going to sit Furuya out. Like, you don't need to push yourself. Don't self-destruct. We got to gradually build up. Rome wasn't built in a day. It, again, goes back to that mentality that Kataoka said to Furuya, being like, you got to play this one step at a time. You can't just push it and expect to get the results you want. You've got to take baby steps, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. And I like that Yui also says, he's like, I'm going to use my bat and my play to help make up for wherever my deficits are as a catcher at this point. I'm going to use my skill as a batter to help the team the best that I can. And I like that Yui has that positive attitude with it. It's really good. Speaking of positive attitude, Kuramochi with the mafia boss face where he's like just looking down on him. I love that while Zono is like trying to be this stoic presence for the team, Kuramochi's like stepping it up too, being like, we got this, and like just being this. I feel like when Miyuki's gone, Kuramochi like adopts this like delinquent attitude, and I kind of love it. It's great. And then I love that Sawamura calling Haruichi the babyface devil, the black angel of Sato. I'm like, what? It's so amazing. Like, Sawamura's nicknames for Haruichi were golden in this episode, and I love that Haruichi's like, I'm gonna let him have this. If it helps the team, I'm just gonna let it go. I'm not gonna beat him up for it this time. But I also like that Haruichi is all about following your gut instinct, because he's like, he was gonna bunt, and then at the last second he's like, it just felt right, and he switched it to hit it, and it paid off. I was like, I love that Haruichi's like, no, when your gut instinct tells you to do something, sometimes you just gotta follow it. That was really good too. And then Zono talking about picking up the slack for the first years and, representing as a third year, that now that Ono's out of the way, he's like, we've got to do this. Miyuki's gone, Ono's gone. We've got 2 of our third years are gone. We've got to pick up the pace, and we've got to step up to help fill those shoes. And then Sawamura calling Furuya a runaway train, like a simple-minded runaway train. Not wrong, but I'm also like, Sawamura, you are the exact same thing. Like, you've been called the exact same thing. You've been called a runaway train too. So it's like, it's great, the parallels between them that they make that they don't even realize. And then Furuya looking back at Yui, like Furuya's like I'm a second year, you're trying your hardest, I gotta try hard too. So I love that. I love Furuya looking back at Yui and just like giving him this like you and I, we're gonna do this. It's gonna work. It's gonna be great. And then, but Yamamori, but again, Terajima's like, oh, you had this really cool moment between you and Yui. Yeah, that's great, but you're still going to get out in a double play. It's like Zono and Furuya have these great moments, and then Terajima's like, nah, I'm still going to get you out. It's like, ugh. But Yamamori doing the double play, and even Sawamura's impressed by it. It's like, damn. And then Kataoka's like, okay, at 100 pitches, you're going to be at your limit. And he has Kaneda and Koshu warming up to possibly come in. And even Sawamura starts warming up. And I like that Sawamura says, he's like, no, I know my role. I'm going to be ready to go. It's going to be fine, right? And so Furuya, what have I gotten here? He's better under... Okay, so we're going to talk about Furuya and Ochiai. What I was going to bring up is how Ochiai describes Furuya. Because I've called Furuya kind of a prodigy. But Ochiai, oddly enough, I think phrases it best. He's like, no, Furuya has been blessed with a body that is able to pitch the fastballs like he does. He's not necessarily a prodigy, because a prodigy is kind of like a genius. So he's not Amamisa. He's not Kosei, even though I've compared him with Kosei in the last couple episodes. He's not totally like him. But he's like, Furuya has so much potential. He has limitless potential and so much room for growth. But he can only do what he is mentally and physically capable of in the moment together, synchronized. And he's like, Furuya, he can do so much, and when he gets in a rhythm, he's unstoppable. But the moment he gets out of a rhythm, he breaks, and he breaks hard. It's like he is a glass vase that's beautiful and has this ability to be like very valuable. But the moment that there's a crack in it, it's really fragile, and you've got to watch it because it could possibly break at any moment. That inconsistency. And that's been Furuya all along. That's been since my mind went to the game where we had the rain, like at the start of season 2. And my dog's going crazy. But at the start of season 2, my mind, I was instantly like, yeah, no, that's Furuya. Because Furuya was like on a roll, had a rhythm, was doing amazing. And the moment it started raining and threw him off, just like threw off everything. And so that's just Furuya. That's how he works. And he has limitless potential when he has all the right pieces. He has all the right pieces to be the best pitcher in Japan, but he's not quite figured out how to put the puzzle together. And it's just going to be a game that Furuya plays until he figures it out. And I like that both Ochi and Katioka are thinking, is he at the stage to be the ace for the summer, or does he need more time and growth? And what I was going to say is I think that Furuya should not be the ace, not because he's not ready necessarily, but because Furuya can do things like when he's under pressure, he can push himself to grow. And I think that's what needs to happen. I think Sawamura needs to be the ace, and that it's going to be a motivator for Furuya to keep growing and figure out what he needs to do. It's going to be kind of what happened with Sawamura when Furuya was the ace. When Furuya was the ace, it motivated Sawamura to say, okay, what do I need to do to be in that position? And I think making Sawamura the ace is going to, in the best way, reverse the scenario where now Furuya needs to step back and be like, okay, I was the ace, now I'm not. What do I need to do to make myself better? And it's going to force him, kind of like Miyuki becoming captain, forcing him to make decisions to make himself grow better in a positive way, but not have the pressure of the ace on him to where he breaks, right? I think that it's going to let Furuya take some pressure off in a sense mentally, but also pressure him to move forward and keep growing to where he can get back to where he once was. I don't know if that's going to be the case that happens, but I feel like Ochi talking about him being fragile like this at the end of the episode is going to be the deciding factor of making Sawamura the ace. And that way Furuya is going to spend the rest of the summer, like, he won't have that pressure on him, but he'll be motivated at the same time to do well so he can get that position back from Sawamura. That's at least what I think is going to happen, but I don't know. I could be totally wrong. That's where I'm at right now. But these episodes were an emotional roller coaster. It was just like highs and lows, surprises, injuries, like just the fan service of Mei and Miyuki together as a battery. Seeing Mei and Miyuki together as a battery has made me realize why they're not a battery. Because they could be amazing, but Mei is way too much of a diva, and Miyuki it's like two alphas. They both want to be the dominant one in the relationship, and it's just not gonna work. You got two tops. Well, which is funny because in a lot of fan fiction, where Miyuki is shipped with other characters, Miyuki's the bottom, and I'm like, okay, power bottom. I guess I see that if you're gonna go that route. But they both are like, so they both want to be dominant in the battery. Miyuki wants to make the calls, but Mei wants the catchers to kind of do what he wants. So you've got these two butting heads, and it doesn't quite work. With Harada and Itsuki, it works really well because Harada is kind of like Inui. Harada knows how Mei is, and Harada's like, okay, I will make my pride tone down a notch and adjust to your diva-ness, and I'll work with you. And they're both Harada and Inui are smart enough where they're like, okay, we can work with you, Mei, and do what you want us to do. We can handle your diva-ness. It's fine. But Miyuki, I think, gets to the point where Miyuki's like, nah, I want to be in charge. like Miyuki's got a little bit more pride, and he's like, nah. And then Itsuki is just like, let me just keep you happy, Mei. It's like, So as much as I love Mei and Miyuki as a battery, I can see why they're not. They're just not quite fully there. They have so much potential, but they're just not quite totally compatible. But I love it. These episodes have been great. I'm so excited. Like I said, I'm going to be going on vacation next weekend, so probably in the next couple days, I'm going to watch episodes 39, 40, and 41, see the conclusion probably of this game and probably the conclusion of the tournament, the training camp in this next set. At least that's what I'm predicting, but we shall see, right? So I'm curious to know your thoughts below, how you guys thought about these episodes. I loved them. I thought they were great, but I'm curious to know your thoughts and what you guys thought as well. So in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I will be back very soon with more Ace of the Diamond Act 2.